BNB spoilers, Luna goes missing, reappearance planned in the new year? The bold and the beautiful spoilers document that Luna Nozawa, Lisa Yamada, is indestructible, or at least she has been to date. So, the gathered throng of all connected characters at the beach house implies a seeming grand finale is ahead. Would BNB write out a raging Daytime Emmy Award winner so quickly and without much fanfare by having Yamada's character provably perish in this escape from the soapy version of Alcatraz? The ode to that classic 1979 movie, Escape from Alcatraz, which starred Hollywood legend Clint Eastwood, Frank Morris, was based on a real escape that took place at that famed federal prison in 1962. So, might Luna's escape lead to her not being captured, but also not being proven to be dead? More strong questions than answers is good soap. There is the question of the time gap between November and next spring. How could Luna remain relevant for all those months? It's hard to write stories for a character who is imprisoned. While other prisoners have and could become part of Luna's self-imposed odyssey that isn't overly compelling. Eastwood's character didn't break out of prison alone or jump into a laundry basket. He plotted an elaborate scheme, involved other inmates, and used the water as his escape route. Luna simply fooled a naive prison guard, was driven to freedom, and made her way to the beach house, where she shot 2 people and received a bullet herself. Will Spencer realizes temporary reprieve. Will Spencer's, Crew Morrow, new home represents a heartfelt distraction that his father generously provided. Bill Spencer, Don Diamont, sees this gift as a look toward the future, with the past being controllable. But Bill and everyone else wrongly assumed that Luna would remain locked up. She didn't need Bill or a pardon to regain access to the world this time, as her compulsion to see the father of her baby led to the highly improbable escape via a surely awful-smelling laundry cart. The just-realized bliss Will and Electra Forrester, Linnea Grace, shared was ruined by Luna again. But at least they were soon joined by Deputy Chief Bradley Baker, Dan Martin, and a sizable number of characters who have their best interests at heart. Luna Nozawa only needs one enabler. Remy Price, Christian Weissman, is the ideal candidate to help Luna, assuming she isn't captured and her body doesn't wash ashore in the coming days. Deke Sharp, Harrison Cohn, just called for time and space, which gives Remy opportunity. No one is going to be keeping tabs on him after the Forrester Creations reintroduction fail. That means Weissman's character can be the person Luna connects with and lives with for months into the new year. Then, after the series of popular holidays, including Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, and possibly Easter, are memories, Luna can reappear. She'll be ready to deliver her baby and the shocker of her next great comeback. The world of high fashion and even higher drama in Los Angeles has been plunged into a state of stunned disbelief and palpable anxiety. The saga of the soap's most recent, and arguably most unhinged, villain, Luna Nozawa, has reached a horrifying, yet strangely ambiguous, climax. According to the latest heart-stopping spoilers and fan theories tearing across the internet, the escapee, who was already on the run from the law after a litany of crimes, has now vanished. The initial news of her supposed death sent shockwaves through the Forrester, Logan, and Spencer families, but seasoned BNB viewers know better than to trust an off-screen tragedy. The lingering question on every fan's mind isn't if Luna will return, but when, and what new, chaotic reign she'll usher in when she does. All signs point to a spectacular, rating-sweeps-worthy resurrection right around the turn of the calendar, a triumphant, psychotic reappearance planned for the new year. Police carlight the deadly ambiguity of Luna's last scene. The episode that presumably marked Luna's end was a masterclass in soap opera misdirection. Viewers watched in terror as the escaped convict, desperate to connect with her estranged love, Will Spencer, in Malibu, was suddenly confronted by blinding headlights. The scene cut away just before impact, leaving Luna's fate hanging in the cruel, dark air. Subsequently, Deputy Chief Bradley Baker confirmed the worst. Luna Nozawa, the young woman who turned from a sweet intern to a manipulative monster overnight, was declared dead at the scene of a hit-and-run. However, the lack of crucial on-screen evidence is the single biggest clue that this death is a total fabrication. This is The Bold and the Beautiful, a show where characters bounce back from being shot, falling from cliffs, and being pronounced dead more often than they change outfits. No body, no funeral, no closure. The most glaring red flag is the complete absence of any tangible proof. There was no body bag, no trip to the morgue, and certainly no funeral service for a character who had just inflicted a massive amount of trauma on the city's most powerful families. In soap opera language, no confirmed remains means the character is alive and well, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The case of the stolen clothes, the seemingly random sideplot involving Luna stealing clothes from a beachgoer after her prison escape, is now seen as the key to the entire mystery. The leading fan theory suggests the petite, dark-haired beachgoer, who had the misfortune of putting on Luna's discarded prison uniform, was the actual hit-and-run victim. A body found in prison garb would be quickly identified by authorities as the escaped inmate, Luna, allowing the real Luna to disappear into the wind, shushing face the silence of the supervillain matriarch. Another incredibly telling sign of Luna's continued existence is the shocking silence from her biological grandmother, the legendary villainess, Sheila Carter. Sheila's maternal, and often manipulative, instincts have always been at the forefront of her character. When Luna previously suffered a near-death experience, Sheila was relentless in demanding to know the burial site. This time? Nothing. Her silence is completely out of character and has led to mass fan speculation that Sheila is either in on the scheme or has already figured out that Luna survived. Could Sheila, in a twisted act of grandmotherly devotion, be harboring Luna? Or is Luna, ever the puppet master, simply using her family's fears to buy herself time? Given Luna's history of manipulation, which even surprised the show's own head writer, it's entirely plausible that she is laying low, perhaps under the protective wing of another powerful, morally bankrupt figure, maybe even her other grandmother, the highly skilled Dr. Lee Finnegan, who has a history of faking deaths to save her own family members. Hourglass not done. The new year, new villain theory, as sweeps return. The consensus among fans and spoiler analysts is that Luna's death is simply a narrative pause, a way for the writers to shift focus to other storylines, such as the brewing war between Eric and Ridge at Forrester Creations or the drama surrounding Hope and Liam's upcoming wedding. However, a major plot hole like an ambiguous character death is too juicy to leave unresolved for long. The most popular prediction for Luna's return is during a major sweeps period, likely the new year, January or February, or spring sweeps in May. Luna, who is reportedly pregnant with Will Spencer's child, or at least, was claiming to be, may resurface right as she is about to give birth. A New Year's Day baby arrival would be a jaw-dropping event. Imagine the scene. Will and Elektra are finally enjoying their peace, only to have a heavily pregnant Luna, dressed to the nines and dripping with entitlement, appear on their doorstep, presenting a newborn and demanding her rightful place in the Spencer dynasty. The twisted twin, an older, and perhaps more outlandish, fan theory is that the Luna who was the sweet intern and the Luna who became the murderous, sociopathic villain are actually non-identical twins with different fathers, and the real Luna is the one who has now vanished. This would be a perfect soap opera twist, allowing the show to redeem the original, good Luna while keeping the delicious chaos of the unhinged twin, who could still be lurking. Broken heart. The emotional fallout, Will, Elektra, and Katie in crisis. While Luna is playing her deadly game of hide-and-seek, the emotional toll on the characters she left behind is immense. Will Spencer is racked with a complex mixture of guilt and relief. Even though he has Elektra Forrester by his side, the thought of Luna being truly dead, and potentially pregnant, will haunt him, making him vulnerable to her eventual return. Elektra Forrester is finally finding peace, but her happiness is built on a shaky foundation. Luna's reappearance would instantly put her in the crosshairs, as Luna has always blamed Elektra for coming between her and Will. Katie Logan is reportedly under immense stress from the entire ordeal, with speculation that her fragile heart condition could be dangerously aggravated by the emotional chaos. Luna's return would be a near-fatal blow to Katie. This isn't just a missing person case, it's a ticking time bomb. The writers have successfully turned the page to the next chapter of this explosive storyline by giving Luna the perfect escape route and an undeniable reason to return. Her crimes, which included framing her mother, 2 counts of murder, and attempted kidnapping, all pale in comparison to the dramatic fireworks of a back-from-the-dead villain ready to seize what she believes is hers. The countdown to the new year has begun, and every bold and the beautiful fan should be holding their breath. Luna Nozawa is not gone, she is simply regrouping. And when she returns, the Forrester, Logan, and Spencer families will truly know what it means to be living in the epicenter of high-stakes, unhinged soap opera drama. Get ready, Los Angeles. Luna is coming home. The news cycle is the heartbeat of our collective anxiety. Every morning, we plug ourselves into the global stream, and what we receive is rarely a message of simple, unadulterated joy. Instead, we are met with today very sad news. This is the foundation of the phrase, acknowledging the inherent gravitational pull of tragedy, conflict, and disaster that dominates our media landscape. It is an acknowledgement that to be informed is often to be saddened. But the phrase immediately pivots from simple reportage to profound confusion. The sadness is caused by news that contains more strong questions than answers. This is the critical, high-engagement element. In the past, news aimed for closure, the who, what, when, and why delivered in a tidy package. Modern reality, however, is messy. We live in a world defined by systemic issues, climate change, geopolitical instability, wealth inequality, where the narrative is perpetually open-ended, the causes are convoluted, and the solutions are elusive. The sad news is no longer a self-contained event but a gateway to a labyrinth of ethical, philosophical, and logistical inquiries. The strong questions are the questions of scale, responsibility, and meaning. Why does this keep happening? Who is truly to blame? How can I, a single person, possibly make a difference? This uncertainty, this lack of resolution, is precisely what makes the news so engaging, yet so psychologically taxing. It fuels the endless debate, the comment sections, and the private anxieties that sustain the 24-hour cycle. Soap, the utility of soap, cleansing the existential mess. The final, arresting conclusion is the most surprising. This profound, sorrowful ambiguity is good soap. What does soap signify in this context? 1. The ritual of absolution and cleansing. Soap is fundamentally an agent of purification. It removes grime, oil, and the visible residue of the world. By calling the unresolved tragedy of the news good soap, the phrase suggests that the consumption of this sad, questioning information acts as a daily ritual of psychic or social cleansing. We engage with the news not just to be informed, but to demonstrate our empathy and moral alignment. By shaking our heads at the corruption, mourning the loss, and grappling with the strong questions, we symbolically wash our hands of complicity. It's a passive form of moral engagement, a low-cost way to feel like a participant in the struggle for a better world. The sadness and the confusion are the lather, the act of processing them is the rinse. 2. The lubricant of social conversation. Beyond personal cleansing, soap is a necessary social lubricant. It makes us presentable and allows us to comfortably interact with others. The news, the shared sad news and the common strong questions, performs a similar function. It gives us a public, pre-approved topic of conversation that transcends local gossip. Did you hear about X? It's just terrible. And how are we supposed to fix it? This shared grappling with the unanswerable provides a common ground for social bonding. The news is the texture of our small talk, the grist for our intellectual mills, and the necessary shared context that proves we are all inhabiting the same complicated reality. The stronger the questions, the deeper the conversation, and thus, the better the soap for fostering connection. 3. A barrier against the inedible truth. Perhaps the most potent interpretation is that the news cycle, as good soap, is what protects us from the raw, overwhelming truth. The news, especially when framed as a set of strong, ongoing questions, is still a structured narrative. It provides a frame, a beginning, a middle, and a series of what-ifs that keep us engaged but safely distanced from the actual, chaotic, and often unbearable reality. The constant flow of information, the endless lathering, prevents a single, catastrophic truth from crystallizing and overwhelming us. We are constantly washing, but never fully dry, never fully forced to confront the absolute meaninglessness or absolute terror of a single, definitive conclusion. The lack of answers is, paradoxically, comforting, because a definitive answer might shatter the comfortable illusions we need to function. The soap is the sudsy layer that prevents the existential water from drowning us. Brain, the high engagement feedback loop. This synthesis of sorrow, confusion, and utility creates a high-engagement feedback loop that defines the modern information economy. Today, very sad news, tragedy captures attention instantly, sadness equals clicks/views. More strong questions than answers, ambiguity drives sustained engagement, uncertainty equals comments shares debate. The act of consuming and debating provides a momentary sense of moral worth or social currency, ritual equals daily return. In this loop, the media and the public participate in a transaction where resolution is not the goal. The goal is the process itself, the collective lathering, the public hand-wringing, the endless cycle of posing unanswerable questions. We are addicted to the rinse cycle because it affirms our moral status and gives us something to talk about, while postponing the terrifying responsibility of finding a final solution. The phrase is a cynical yet beautiful portrait of contemporary consciousness. It tells us that we have found a way to commodify our own existential dread, turning the world's sadness and complexity into a daily, necessary cleansing ritual. The bar of good soap may never shrink completely, but as long as we keep rubbing it, we can keep the unvarnished truth at bay, one terrible, questionable story at a time. It is a sad, poignant acceptance of reality. Sometimes, the best way to live with the world's problems is to turn the contemplation of them into a productive, albeit tragic, part of our daily routine. The silence in the grand, echoing chambers of the Spencer estate was a sound more profound than any scream. It was the sound of a fragile hope finally cracking, the moment when Will Spencer, the man who had, for a fleeting, beautiful moment, believed he had outrun the inevitable, looked into the mirror and realized his freedom was not a gift, but a loan. The news that swept through the city today was devastating. The temporary reprieve, the celebrated stay of execution he'd been granted only last month, was not a step towards acquittal, but merely a delay on the road to ruin. The saga of Will Spencer has been a tragedy played out in the harsh, unflinching lights of 1,000 news cameras. A scion of one of the city's most powerful families, Will's fall from grace was a spectacle of betrayal and corporate malfeasance. The charges were damning, the evidence seemingly insurmountable, but a last-minute appeal, a desperate, brilliant legal maneuver by his counsel, had secured him 30 days. 30 days to breathe free air, to walk under an open sky, to dine with the family he loved. It was an interlude, a beautiful, cruel pause in a life sentence. And today, the clock stopped. Hourglass not done the illusion of freedom. For 4 weeks, the world watched a man reborn. Will had attacked his freedom with a fervor bordering on desperation. He didn't waste a minute. There were no lavish parties, no defiant public statements. Instead, he sought to cram a lifetime of amends into a single month. He spent every morning in the dilapidated community center his grandmother had once secretly funded, volunteering his own labor and capital, trying to atone for the years he'd been blinded by the family's toxic ambition. He spent his afternoons with his estranged wife, Sarah, not fighting the divorce papers she'd filed, but simply listening, trying to heal the wounds his obsession had inflicted. The heartbreaking irony was that the man they were seeing now, compassionate, humble, grounded, was the man they had always wished he could be. He was magnificent in those weeks, his sister, Eleanor, later confessed, tears streaming down her face. He laughed more than I've heard him laugh in a decade. He held our hands so tightly. It was like watching a dying star go supernova, brief, unbelievably bright, and ultimately, a final farewell. This was the source of the profound sadness in today's news. The reprieve wasn't just a legal maneuver, it was a psychological one. It gave Will, and everyone who loved him, an unbearable taste of what could have been. It created an illusion of redemption, a false dawn that made the final darkness so much more absolute. Classical building the court's cruel verdict. The official ruling from the appellate division was clinical and brief, devoid of the human emotion that had characterized the past month's drama. It stated, simply, that while the defense's technical arguments were compelling, they did not meet the high bar required to overturn the original conviction. The motion for a new trial was denied. The temporary reprieve was officially over. Will Spencer was ordered to surrender to the authorities within 24 hours. The emotional toll of this kind of temporary hope is often more devastating than immediate conviction. When the verdict first came down months ago, there was shock, anger, and the rallying cry of an ongoing fight. The reprieve provided a period of calm, a chance to mourn the past and celebrate the present, but it demanded a high cost, the renewed, crushing finality of today. For Sarah Spencer, the news was a fresh wound. She had almost let herself believe they could rebuild. The distance that had separated them for years had vanished in those 4 weeks. They had talked, truly talked, about their life, their mistakes, and the future. "I gave him his hope back," Sarah wrote in a poignant social media post that was instantly deleted but widely screenshotted. "And in doing so, I made today's ending hurt 1,000 times worse. How can a court give a man his life back just to snatch it away? It's barbaric." New Moon: The True Cost of Delay. The tragedy of Will Spencer's story is not just the loss of his freedom, but the loss of the man he became in its shadow. He proved, unequivocally, that he had the capacity for true repentance and change. His month of service, his efforts at reconciliation, they were genuine, not cynical performances for the press. He realized what was important only when the structure of his old life had been annihilated. The news today confirms that the man who finally found his true moral compass will spend the rest of his foreseeable future behind bars. The sad truth is that the law, in this instance, is blind not only to status but to genuine, profound repentance. The mistakes of the past, however deeply regretted, must still be paid for in full. Will Spencer, the heir to an empire, is now simply inmate 4792. As he prepares to walk back through the gates, the silence around him is heavy with the collective grief of a family and a city that had dared to believe in miracles. The temporary reprieve was a beautiful lie, a final, cruel gift that made the truth an unbearable weight. His temporary freedom was his greatest moment of humanity, making his permanent incarceration the very sad news that weighs so heavily on everyone today. As he prepares to walk back through the gates, the silence around him is heavy with the collective grief of a family and a city that had dared to believe in miracles. The temporary reprieve was a beautiful lie, a final, cruel gift that made the truth an unbearable weight. His temporary freedom was his greatest moment of humanity, making his permanent incarceration the very sad news that weighs so heavily on everyone today. Luna Nozawa is truly, finally, and definitively gone from the canvas of the bold and the beautiful should feel like a relief. Her short, cataclysmic reign as a supervillain saw her transform from a bright-eyed intern into a black hole of manipulative obsession, crime, and chaos. Yet, in the hollow silence that follows Deputy Chief Baker's somber announcement, a silence punctuated only by the relieved sighs of the Spencer and Forrester families, there is a profound and unsettling sadness. Luna's tragedy is not just the sad end of a twisted story, it is a brutal indictment of the very nature of enablers, and how a single failure of conscience can damn a soul. For all her calculated malice, her paternity swaps, her kidnapping attempts, the sexual assault on Will Spencer, and the final, desperate escape that ended under the flash of a car's headlights, Luna was, at her core, a Frankenstein's monster of the show's most volatile bloodlines. She was the daughter of the notoriously unhinged Poppy Nozawa and the dark legacy of the Finnegan-Carter clan. In a town where redemption is offered with the frequency of morning coffee, Luna was a character designed for darkness, yet perpetually poised on the precipice of light. All she needed was one true enabler, not of her crimes, but of her humanity. The failure of the matriarchy, an indictment. The greatest tragedy in Luna's saga is the colossal failure of the two women who shared her blood and her destiny, her mother, Poppy Nozawa, and her biological grandmother, Sheila Carter. The phrase that has echoed across social media commentary since her descent is piercingly accurate: Luna Nozawa only needed one enabler. Poppy, the woman who raised her, was the first line of defense. Her love, however, was fundamentally poisoned by her own secrets and poor judgment. Poppy didn't enable Luna's villainy through action, but through paralyzing inaction and misplaced sympathy. When Luna needed firm boundaries and the harsh clarity of consequence, Poppy offered only bewildered helplessness, often prioritizing her own social standing or her relationship with Deacon over the terrifying spiral of her daughter. A mother's love should be a lifeline. For Luna, it was merely an anchor dragging her into deeper water. She was given a get-out-of-jail card when she desperately needed a ticket to a moral reckoning. Then there is Sheila Carter, a woman who, in a chilling twist of irony, was uniquely positioned to save Luna. Sheila knows the deadly allure of obsession, she understands the hyper-focus that isolates and destroys. As one analyst brilliantly observed, Sheila was the only one with the requisite fortitude to intervene, precisely because she had walked that dark path herself. In recent months, Sheila has attempted a form of twisted redemption for Deacon, striving to be a better person. This was her chance to demonstrate that self-awareness by stopping the dark cycle in her own granddaughter. She chose self-preservation, or perhaps simply lacked the moral courage to confront her own reflection in the young woman's eyes. Both her mother and her grandmother, one through weakness, the other through a lack of ethical commitment, failed the ultimate test. They were the only two people with the familial leverage to ground her, to force her to confront her delusions, to be the one enabler of good. Instead, they enabled the environment that allowed her evil to flourish unchecked. The delusion and the final run. Luna's final, heartbreaking sequence was pure, unadulterated soap opera poetry. Escaping from prison, she didn't seek a flight out of the country, she ran straight to the object of her obsession, Will Spencer, revealing the devastating truth of her miscarriage before her final, futile plea for his love. She was seeking validation, not freedom. Her last moments, illuminated by the headlights on the coastal highway, weren't a triumph of escape, they were a desperate sprint toward the inevitable. The tragic irony is that the show's writers, by having her struck by an unseen vehicle, left her fate as ambiguous as her character's potential. Is she really dead? In the BNB universe, only an on-screen cremation truly seals a character's fate. The lack of a body, the off-screen confirmation of death, the mysterious beachgoer who may have been mistaken for her, these narrative loopholes are less a sign of sloppy writing and more a symbol of the nature of her villainy. It never truly dies. But for the viewer, the sadness lies in the wasted potential. Lisa Yamada's Emmy-winning performance brought depth and a terrifying charisma to a character who became a lightning rod for the audience. We saw flashes of the vulnerable girl behind the sociopath, the child desperate for a father, longing for belonging, and terrified of her own loneliness. Her crimes were heinous, but the root cause was a desperate, unanchored need for love, which manifested as possession. A concluding requiem. Luna Nozawa's tragic end serves as a grim requiem for what could have been. The sad news is not that a criminal met justice, but that a young life, clearly crying out for intervention, was instead handed an emotional blank check by those closest to her. The moral of Luna's story is clear: one single, strong voice of unyielding love and truth, one person willing to stand up and say no to the self-destructive spiral, could have disabled the bomb that was Luna's life. They say it takes a village to raise a child. In Luna's case, it only took one enabler, one person to choose responsibility over comfort, truth over placation, to save her from becoming the monster she ultimately became. And because that one person was nowhere to be found, a high-speed wreck on a coastal road became the only final chapter available to her. Whether the car truly ended her life remains to be seen. But the emotional finality of her tale, the tragedy of a woman who destroyed herself because the people who could have saved her chose to look away, that, at least, is a sad truth that resonates far beyond the fictional hills of Los Angeles.